chair these things, not as a politician in any way. I did call in on the Prime Minister and the Chancellor and say, there are some good ideas about housing you ought to hear. So I am looking forward to passing on some of those things as well in my own work. But it's really to learn from each other. And today, of course, is this critical area of the skills, the training, the apprenticeships in this industry. We are in a country that is expected to have 10 million more people by the middle of the century than we have now, and where politicians of all parties have woken up to that a lot of action has to take place in housing and are setting targets of 300,000 new homes per year, which is more than we've built for a very long time. And who's going to build them? Where are the skills going to come from if we need, as one survey said, 157,000 new recruits in different occupations in this industry in the next 5 years or so? Where are they going to come from? Where are we going to find those skills in a country with low unemployment overall? So it's these sorts of issues that this morning is about, and as Rupert says, we're going to go through 4 panels discussing apprenticeships, discussing training, diversity, and then the leadership on this in the whole industry. So thank you in advance to everybody who's going to take part. And on this first panel, which is about apprenticeships specifically, we've got Karen Jones, who is... no, we haven't got Karen Jones. She moved to the other panel. I've already got that wrong. We've got Emma Wright of the Berkeley Group, graduate and apprentice manager, so very appropriate person to have. We've got Tanja Smith of Gradon Architecture and chair of the Institute for Apprenticeships, Construction Apprenticeships. We've got Neil Bentley, Dr. Neil Bentley, who is CEO of WorldSkills and former Deputy Director General of the CBI. And we've got Ashley Terron from Redrow, who is WorldSkills' best bricklayer, basically the best bricklayer in the world. And therefore in the known universe, as far as I can work out. And he has his own inspirational story. And a lot to tell us, I think. They will all have a lot to tell us. So I'm just going to ask each of them just to say anything else they want to tell you about themselves and the main point they want to get across in this panel. So just 2 or 3 minutes each, hopefully. And then we're going to have a discussion. And I'll ask you to take part in that if you wish to do so with any questions. So let's get going. Emma, why don't you go first?
Thank you. I'm Emma Wright. I'm the graduate and apprentice manager at Berkeley Group, and I'm responsible for the apprenticeship, for increasing the number of apprenticeships we have both within Berkeley and through our subcontractors. And I created and reignited our graduate scheme. In regards to apprenticeships, we're doing a huge amount currently. We had a commitment where we'd have 1,500 people across our sites in apprenticeships or formal training by May this year. We have completely surpassed this and have over 2,500 people in apprenticeships and vocational training, so everything from MVQs, H&Ds through to membership of chartered organisations. So doing a lot to try and increase the skills throughout Berkeley Group. I think our biggest area we're focusing on at the moment is looking at further education. We feel that there are lots of people who don't really understand what construction is and don't understand what the areas of opportunities are in construction. Everybody knows about the typical trades like the bricklayers and the plumbers, but don't really understand the other aspects that come into building a house. So we're working on developing skill centres across London to try and increase the trades, the forgotten trades, to try and get people into these routes. We're currently sending some of our apprentices halfway around the country to do some of the required skills that aren't available in London, and trying to really push this and make them available in London and accessible to all.
Thank you very much. Tanja, do you kick off with your first thought?
Right, okay, well, by day I'm a technologist for Gradon Architecture, and that allows me to be design-based as well as site-based, and obviously that gives me a good insight as to what really are the issues being faced on a day-to-day basis in terms of skill shortages, diminishing skills and such like. And that's kind of why I agreed to be chair of the construction route panel for the IFA. In the last 8 months that our panel have been involved, we are responsible for reviewing and making recommendations on proposal standards and assessment plans that are coming forward. And a lot of what's been coming forward has been really diverse, from level 2 to level 7, ages 16 and upwards. It's been really encouraging to see what's been coming through. We have to date got 37 construction standards approved and another 53 standards in development and in the pipeline. Just to give you an example of some of the stuff that's coming through soon: architectural engineer, healthcare engineering and estate management, work planner, scheduler and heritage stonesman. So you can already see in just a snippet that there is quite a wide variety of proposals coming forward. I think my main point is that we all know, and this is why we're here, there is a major problem of an aging workforce, skills shortages within the industry. But I think as well the industry has got a bit of bad press, and it's about encouraging people and making the wide variety of what is available in the sector to the younger people so that they can be encouraged to take on these apprenticeships. When we do careers days at schools and such like, they don't know a fraction. They only know the headline type careers that are involved and available within the sector. And it's about getting a positive image and the word out there and getting them to understand that really the sector is so vast and there's such a great opportunity to be involved in a fantastic sector. And hopefully that will encourage more investment into development and research and innovation and help bring the industry into, I suppose, a more hip kind of sector to be in. We're really up against it in terms of how STEM have taken over and pushing their subjects, and I think we've missed a trick there. I think a C should have been incorporated into that acronym, and we really as an industry need to push forward a positive image and get the apprenticeships up and running. It's only going to be as successful as anybody who's going to be involved in building up those apprenticeships.
Thank you. Right. Okay. So hip is a good word we can adopt here. Neil, do you want to kick off with your thoughts?
Yeah. So I'm from WorldSkills UK. For those of you who don't know, we're a charity and we're supported by governments across the UK and business and the further education sector. My key point this morning is we need to inspire more young people to enter construction. And how we do that is through skills competitions. So we run skills competitions right across the UK. So we start with about 15,000 young people every year, then 3,000 enter the regional heats, 500 make it to the national finals in Birmingham. We take the best in the UK and then train them to enter international competitions at a European level and at a global level. There are 79 countries involved in doing this globally in WorldSkills. And every 2 years, the Skills Olympics happened. And Team UK gets really stuck in. And at the most recent Skills Olympics in Abu Dhabi, Team UK came 10th in the medal tables, ahead of Germany, we're pleased to say.
Out of how many?
Out of 56 countries.
Okay, right.
And so
Not 11.
No, we do really well. We do really, really well. China's number one. We've got a lot to learn from China. But from construction perspective, we won medals in stonemasonry, plumbing and heating, cabinet making, bricklaying, painting and decorating, joinery, landscape gardening. There's a lot to be proud of in the construction sector, and we're not celebrating that success from a global and national level enough, because what we do with the young people who then win the medals at the national and international level is turn them into our role models that we take into schools and colleges and businesses and get them to be authentic, walking, talking role models to talk to other young people about how you can succeed in a career in construction.
Right, so talking of talking, walking role models, here we are with someone who's come through that process. So Ashley, you tell us a bit about your own experience.
I feel like you're setting the stall very high for me, William. Yeah, so I'm Ashley Terron, currently project manager with Redrow Homes on one of our premium developments in the northwest of 920 homes. In a past life, I used to work with Neil's organisation. I still do currently, but more on the training front. So I was a past competitor in 2013 in Germany over at the competition in Leipzig, and against 26 countries, I beat all the countries and set a new record score in bricklaying. On the back of that, I was awarded a British Empire Medal in Her Majesty's Birthdays Honours List for services to skills, and that was kind of some work that I did with the National Apprenticeship Service as well, which led on to the Apprenticeship Champion of the Year award. So that was how you go into schools, you promote apprenticeships, trying to be a role model, as Neil's saying, just trying to get as many people into the industry as you can, trying to inspire them. So it's work that I continue to do today. From a personal point of view, one of the points that I'd like to raise today is kind of how we educate not only students that are coming through the system, but also the teachers from high school and so on, so that they're better placed to guide the students as they set out basically at the age of 16 onto their career path, be it go to college or start an apprenticeship. I know from a personal point of view, it's a story that I always tell, but I think it's quite fitting, especially for today as well, is basically at the end of year 11, so my father and my eldest brother are both bricklayers as well, a bit of a family business. So I'd set out and decided at the age of 16 that's what I wanted to do, work for the family business and so on. So I was going to go to my local vocational college, do a 3-year apprenticeship and set on my career into bricklaying. And basically head of the year 11, pulled me to one side at the last assembly of the year, and he kind of pulled me to one side, did Mr. Norman, and he said, Ashley, he says, bricklaying, he says, you've got 2 A stars, 2 A's, 6 B's, he says, in your GCSEs, he says, why are you doing bricklaying? And at that time, it was quite upsetting to me as he's questioning my career path. He basically said to me that I should be going to our 6th form college that's part of the school and study my A-levels, do my degree, and then fall back on my bricklaying with his words. So nevertheless, I didn't take his advice, set out on the path that I wanted to, done my 3-year apprenticeship and put myself through the H&C, done everything I did with WorldSkills, and then managed to join Redrow, which is something I always wanted to do, and set out as a site manager, project manager. And after WorldSkills, after the success in WorldSkills, I went back to the school and had a sit-down chat with Mr. Norman. And I basically said, and to be fair to the guy, he swallowed his words, and he said, Ashley, he said, I'm devastated in what I'd said to you. He said, I'm really sorry. He said, but what I can say is like the whole school followed your path and followed your story and everything. He said, we're so proud of you. And now as you walk down the corridors at school, they've got posters promoting apprenticeships, and they feel like they're better placed to promote apprenticeships, as Neil's saying, like I don't like to say it, but as like a role model. It's great for kids to be able to look up to and see different paths that they can set out on. So.
Thank you. It is an inspirational story in your case, but all of you have talked about the gap in education in one way or another, and this may be a theme that runs through all our panels today, of course, so we're going to talk a good deal about how to overcome that. But on this question of on apprenticeships specifically, there's a big argument going on now about the new apprenticeship levy and whether it works. And of course, figures in the last few months have shown the number of apprenticeships in total is down on last year, which was not exactly the idea of the new apprenticeship levy. So without taking up all the time of our panel on this, since it is such a current controversy, does anyone on the panel have a view about, is this going to work? Is the criticism of it justified? Is there some way in housing and construction, is there some way in which this scheme needs altering to make it work? Tanja, you look like you have views about this.
All right, well, this is a question that's come up in other debates, and from the reports that I've received is that level 2 and 3 apprenticeships have dropped, and that's because, and it wasn't entirely unexpected, because what they're doing is discontinuing those apprenticeships, and they are rebooting the system basically. So it's kind of a drop to be able to pick up, and they're trying to get rid of the poorer apprenticeships. The quality wasn't great. There wasn't a great attendance. So all that has kind of diminished in that sense, and they were expecting a drop in that. And with the new apprenticeships coming through, their focus is very much on quality apprenticeships, and hopefully the trend will be to pick it up from there. But yes, they were expecting a
So
drop.
you think it will work out okay in the end?
Well,
is your expectation?
if my workload, because every month we get a pack of proposals, assessment plans, and I tell you what, the workload, our meetings are getting longer and the pack's getting thicker.
So the pipeline is
yeah.
for the future is building up.
Yeah, and I would say that if all the information is accurate in terms of the number of starts that they're expecting, the number of companies, both large and SME size companies, if they are indeed backing all this, then hopefully the expectation is that it would improve and pick up.
Other views about this, Emma?
I think that the levy is ultimately a good thing because it is opening people's eyes to apprenticeships and the fact that they're available and the wide scope of apprenticeships available. I think within house building, one of the issues we've faced is that we don't employ the trades directly, which is where currently the majority of the apprenticeships are. And we're really looking forward to being able to pass down some of our levy to our supply chain next month. Yeah. But I don't think 10% is really enough to pass down. We have a massive levy pot. And in comparison to the amount we're paying into levy and our staff numbers, we are going to find it very difficult to utilise our full pot internally, so want to pass it down. And ultimately, where the skills are needed, the skills aren't necessarily needed in the head office functions, they're needed on site. And we just don't employ staff on site, they're subcontracted. So I think it will work when we can pass levy down to where there's key skills are needed, but I also think we need to be able to pass more than just 10% down.
So this is the voucher, as it were, that you pass down to subcontract, and you can only do that with 10%
as of April,
of the total. But and are you expecting that to change?
Well, we don't know. We're hoping it will change, but I mean, 10% is a great start, and it will be brilliant to pass anything down. But we will have a large surplus in our levy account. And I think that it would be good to be able to pass it down to other people within construction where the key skills are needed.
Yeah. Any other views about this?
Yeah, I think that I understand that the stats are showing DFE stats and the IFA stats that are showing an increase as apprenticeships coming off the frameworks onto the new standard. There's a growing increase. In the autumn, they'll be published, and we'll see a more positive picture being painted about apprenticeship starts. And I think the big picture that we often get lost in some of the negative narrative around the levy is we've just got to make it work, because with Brexit on the horizon and homegrown skills needs, I mean, we've got skills needs right now, they could be exacerbated in the future. We, business, government, everybody involved in this have got to make this work to give more young people an opportunity to get onto apprenticeships. To help with business needs in the future, because if we're going to really make sure that we're making a success of Brexit, whatever that will turn out to be, we've got to make sure that in doing so we're giving more young people opportunities to work and therefore help business succeed and the economy grow. And the last point is just on a bit of good news for you, at least from my perspective. You can spend your levy on WorldSkills. You can spend your levy on WorldSkills competitions as part of the off-the-job training. So if you want to find out more about that, you can go to our website and download our handy guide.
Very good little advert there. And there is this levy across all industries is meant to raise £2.8 billion in the course of a full year, in the course of 2018, with all that money potentially going into apprenticeships. So if everybody can make full use of it, and the way Emma is describing it, it ought to be a huge extension of resources in the country on apprenticeships. But the jury is out at the moment on whether it works.
It's quite interesting that only 2% across all sectors of organisations are paying into the levy. So construction is only a portion of that 2%. And, if we can use that money to the best way possible in getting these apprenticeships off the ground, and hopefully, like you say, pass a bit more of the surplus down and spread the love, basically, it would be really good.
Yeah. So what are the barriers then? Because we've heard of a lot of good work going on here in your organisations and companies, you know, and people like Institute for Apprenticeships and WorldSkills are doing a lot to promote apprenticeships and technical education. So what gets in the way? Why are we not getting this, the message and opportunities across to young people on the scale that we need to? What do you think, Ashley?
I think, well, Redrow's had some research done, building better apprenticeships, and basically there was 2,000 people surveyed, as well as Redrow's apprentices that are currently with us. And I think one of the main points that come across from the apprentices themselves, in fact it was 42%, was said that low starting wages were an issue and basically a barrier. I mean, when you look at the national minimum wage and the apprenticeship minimum wage, and it's going up, I think it's £3.70 as of 1st of April. Redrow actually pay, I think it's £4.95 per hour. So we're trying to, we've seen that as a barrier, and we've upped our game in the sense to attract more people. But I think it's certainly an issue as, again, 16-year-old, when you're looking potentially only in £150 a week and you've got to get yourself to and from work. It's a tough decision. People haven't got the money to buy a car, for example, so looking at public transports. Depending, again, geography of where you live, depends what your transport links are like. So I think it's certainly one of the main barriers.
Other views on that or other barriers, Emma?
So I entirely agree that apprenticeship wages are low. Like Redrow, we encourage our subcontractors to pay significantly above that, and we encourage them to pay $7.20 an hour, but in London. But I think one of the other barriers in relation to wages is also parents. We've had quite a few people who have got 16-year-old children who are claiming benefits for them, who won't let their children go and do an apprenticeship because they're losing out. The benefits they're getting are more than the apprenticeship brings home in a wage. The apprentice brings home in a wage. So parents are saying to their children, well, you can't go and work and do an apprenticeship because we're going to lose out as a family and we can't afford for you to go and do it. And we've had, in our site at Kidbrooke, we've got a skills centre where we run a programme with Royal Borough of Greenwich, and we do a 6-week boot camp, which is funded by Job Centre Plus with Berkeley. And we've had people take part in the boot camp with the end result being to start an apprenticeship. And parents have said to their children, well, you can't take the job you've been offered because we're going to lose lose money. So thanks very much, but stay at home.
Right, I've already got something to tell the Chancellor. Yes, other things on this?
Yeah, because that question of quality and quality of apprenticeships is behind a lot of the challenge that everybody in this room will know around perception of apprenticeships being seen as a second-class route to work and to success. And for sure, parents have got a particular mindset, teachers too, in Ash's experience. But that's why we've got to do more to help them, because a lot of the work that we see that we do with parents when they come to our national finals at the skills show, I think it's something like 90% of parents have their eyes opened to the opportunities and the careers that are out there and the big employers who've got exciting opportunities for their children that they just had no idea about. And I say that because, you know, when you think about higher education, that is seen as the premium route to success. It was only in the mid-90s when really higher education expansion really started to be talking about under the then Blair opposition and the Blair governments driving that expansion to the extent that we're now at a position where we're questioning a lot of that in public policy terms. And fees are now having a negative impact on what parents think and young people think about going to university. And that's a negative incentive why young people and parents are now thinking about apprenticeships. We've got to take a longer term view, I think, and there is a collaborative effort here between industry and government to really reach out to parents and teachers and help them understand the value of apprenticeships and the value of training, and that they are just as good, if not better, depending on your own mindset. How you want to learn, whether you follow an academic route or a practical route, is really important, because all the young people we work with are brilliant at learning in a particular way, and we've got to champion that as an equal learning route, because that often gets lost, and you know, that's what's really, I think, at the back of people's minds, that it's just not as good. And if we can crack that, then I think we'll be on the way to lots more young people, parents and teachers really understanding why doing an apprenticeship is a great thing.
Tanja, do you want to add?
Yeah, I was just saying, aside from that, is also we had a campaign in the northeast aimed mainly at girls to encourage them into the industry, And, you know, we had it titled, it's not just muddy boots. There was another one, which isn't very appropriate, but the whole perception of the construction industry and getting the word out there. I mean, if you have to draw a list of possible career routes within the construction industry, it's amazing. And it's about getting the word out there, anything from something slightly associated, which would be law, to obviously bricklaying, you know, the more obvious headliners, the architects, the planners. But there's so many routes to be able to be part of this construction industry. And when you speak to career advisors, teachers, they just never knew that there was such a wealth of ways to go into the industry. Equally, what I touched on earlier is the funding that goes into the industry now in other areas like technology. I've been told of companies that are pumping in vast amounts of money into research and development and innovation, and I think that's also somewhere where we need to step up our game a little bit within the construction industry. I think when you speak to some people, and the young kids, they want to be involved with cutting edge stuff and all the new things that's coming out and the developments in terms of robotics and whatnot. And the construction industry doesn't seem to have that's going on. And I think if there's people who can go into the research and development and start looking at things. A small example is the things like the digital printing and printing of new houses. But at the end of the day, construction is construction. We're always going to have bricks and mortar, and we're going to need the bricklayers. But how do we attract younger people who maybe aren't quite as passionate and have the family connections to know, well, actually, this is a great job. This is something that I can really, you know, be talented in, to do well in. So it's how to get the message out there and how to get the funding for those who want to do something a bit more cutting edge in the construction industry.
Now, are there other countries that do this more successfully with apprenticeship? Have we got something to learn in the UK from when you look at those people you roundly defeated around the world at bricklaying? You know, nevertheless, in some skills, they must be ahead. What have we got to learn from them?
I think, well, in bricklaying in particular through WorldSkills UK, we kind of partner with Denmark because they're a very strong nation in that skill. But the way Denmark's education system is structured around apprenticeships and so on, they don't just focus on one trade. So a bricklayer, for example, given the climate over there, obviously minus temperatures for at least 4 or 5 months of the year, they don't only specialise in bricklaying, but they'll teach the students wall and floor tiling, a bit of plastering. So the idea is that they're multi-skilled rather than focused on one, and that's as well as, say, I was going to say maths and English then, but maths and Danish.
Yeah.
So they're trying to develop someone that's more suited to the construction environment as basically an all-rounder, as opposed to us that are quite direct within our chosen skill, if you like. But I think also what I experienced as well going through the college system was some of the syllabus was slightly outdated in terms of, I mean, I wrote down on a sheet of paper the other day, just top of my head before we came here, that 70 different trades involved with building houses and different paths that you go down. Again, it's further to the point before that it's a lack of education from teachers and so on, knowing these different routes. But basically, when so you're setting out on your bricklaying, and it's being aware of where it can lead to. And it's just, I think it's kind of gone off point there, to be honest with Liam. But I think it's where you can lead to. So where Denmark at 3 or 4 skills in UK are just one, unless you are outstanding in that one area. Mm-hmm. Denmark's kind of preparing you for a bit more of an all-rounder, really.
Right.
Well,
right.
Just on that point, what we are looking for in apprenticeship standards and assessment plans coming through is transferability of skills. Mm-hmm. And a bit more far-reaching, and also using the industry professionals and trying to crystal ball it a little bit and say, right, you know, and having your ear to the ground and say, okay, we know this is coming through the pipeline. Is this going to be appropriate? All the apprenticeships get reviewed over the next, in the next 3 years once I get passed anyway. So there's a chance to update it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's about trying to get that transferability of skills and getting the word out to the trailblazer groups who are involved to say, yeah, this is what you want, but how is this transferable? And make it a bit more robust and to be able to weather downturns and things like that.
Right. Emma?
Picking up on Ashley's point in terms of what's being taught, we've also found that lots of the methods taught in the classroom are not fit for purpose on site, and we're having to retrain all the staff on site because the lecturers and teachers aren't necessarily au fait with the new modern methods.
Well, they're out of date rather than wrong?
They're out of date.
They're
They're teaching things that they used to do when they were on site 10, 15 years ago. And we encourage teachers to try and come onto site to see how things have changed. Some are very keen to, others are not. But we do spend a lot of time teaching what's learnt in the classroom, which I think is another reason why people aren't so keen to do apprenticeships, especially subcontractors, because they feel that what is currently being taught isn't fit for purpose on a modern day construction site, and it's a waste of time sending someone to college one day a week to be taught something that when they bring it to site has to be retaught, because it takes too much time to do it, and they might as well just be taught on site like a traditional apprenticeship.
And that sort of industry education engagement is much stronger in other countries. For example, Switzerland, Austria, that have more established apprenticeship training routes over the long term. You get much more engagement between industry and education to make sure they are up to speed, and because they're driving quality at all points, the level at which young people come out of their apprenticeships in those countries is higher than in the UK. One of the things we have to do at WorldSkills is create the gap between a level 2 to 3 apprenticeship to a level 5, 6 and 18 months for people to be able to compete at a world-class level. And so bridging that gap and understanding what that gap is in each scale is what we're working on with the government, to try and understand what that gap looks like and how we can get that better, because without the higher quality coming through in the first place from an employer perspective, if the education system isn't delivering that, why? How do we raise quality? And then from a competitiveness perspective, national to international, if we're not bridging those skills gaps, understanding how to do it, then we're not going to improve.
And what about you've mentioned subcontractors a couple of times, Emma, and this industry is unusual in just how the big firms do a lot of their work through small subcontractors. Is there some new way of creating a partnership with them about apprenticeships that is required? We mentioned about what the apprenticeship levy and needing to be able to pass down the vouchers. Is there something else that is required?
So I think it's getting there, especially in London. So we're based, majority of our work is London and the home counties. And I think in London it's definitely coming together, and industry is working far more closely and utilising the subcontractors. There are lots of, the GLA are doing a huge amount in terms of their construction skills centres and construction skills college. We are setting up construction skills centres on our sites on our long-term sites. And I think we're working very closely with colleges and our subcontractors to make sure that what is being delivered is what is needed, but also to write in the syllabus, because I think from subcontractors' perspectives, lots of the apprenticeships are quite long courses that aren't necessarily needed. And you can do a 12-week dry lining course in 12 weeks and teach people the basics and what they need to do to be able to do the job. They don't need to do an apprenticeship for the full year, because in reality the extra 9 months aren't necessarily giving them a huge amount extra. They can do the job in a 12-week course. So we're looking at also developing short courses to make sure that the skills that are needed are delivered without using apprenticeships.
Right, okay. Now, does anybody want to come in with a question or point or suggestion or anything? Yes, in the front row here. And we've got a microphone somewhere springing into action and heading your way. Yes, here in the front row. Lady in the front row.
Good morning. My name's Janet College. I'm one of the directors of National Careers Week. I was very interested in what Ashley was saying about his teacher's response, and also what other panel members were saying about the need to get in and educate teachers and so on. A lot of my work is supporting schools with developing their careers information. And again, I come across the problem of schools and and companies not being able to come together because of barriers that are in each other's way. And one of the things that I came across less than a fortnight ago was a school who desperately wanted to get young people out on work experience for building careers, found they couldn't get that because of the health and safety problems. And instead they're being offered the Open Sites initiative, which for them would have meant taking children out of school and they're not allowed to do. I'm just wondering if there is any ideas within the industry that might get past these barriers and so allow schools to develop a more realistic view of what is going on in the world of building.
Right. So this is the thing about the other way around. We've all been complaining about education. Education needs help from the industry in various ways. So what can be done about that?
From our perspective, our practice, we've been involved with schools, local schools to our area, where we've run design competitions and taken them through the whole design process and split them up into teams and had them get a glimpse of what it is all about, aside from letting them have placements within the office. Now, obviously, ours is a safe environment, it's an office, but they have, with consent, they're able to go to sites deemed, well, less dangerous, I suppose. So they do get to go out and put the hard hat on and the high-vis vest.
So there is some flexibility.
Yeah.
Health and safety issues.
Yeah, it just, you've got to be a bit careful, but you be a bit clever about where you take them. But we found that the whole competition thing was really good because it got them to, someone was designated project manager, someone was an architect, someone was an engineer, someone was the builder who had to try and get all the procurement sorted out and materials and what they thought needed, and someone had to try and put a cost plan together. And so it went on, and it was, you ended up with quite a big team, and it was amazing what came through on that, and the enthusiasm, because they developed their own ideas, and from the bazaar to it was incredible what came through, and it actually inspired us in the office to see, if this is the caliber of what is potentially out there, then that's great, but it's how to capture them to do that. And we can only, as a small practice, reach out to so many schools.
Emma, yeah?
We've done something very similar in terms of getting groups in and giving them different roles. But we've also we also get people to come onto site and have a go sessions. So we have schools on site for a day where they'll spend an hour building a brick wall, an hour doing some mosaic tiling. They'll have a site visit looking at the health and safety aspect, and then do some bits around plumbing, etc. It does mean they have to leave school, but we do give them the opportunity to go on a part of the site which we're not using, so it's deemed as safe. So they are wearing the high-vis, the hard hats, etc., and do get to touch and feel and give the different trades a go. But in terms of work experience, it is really difficult with insurance. We, as I said, predominantly work in London. And if you've got a 40-storey building, we can't have children under 18 going up. It's just not safe because of working from heights.
It sounds like there's some good things happen, but not on a sufficient scale for someone thinking of Careers Week for the whole country and thousands of schools.
Yeah, but this is where,
Neil.
I'm sure you're aware, I don't know what others are, the Careers and Enterprise Company should be coming in and playing a much stronger role around bringing business and schools together to have exactly that sort of dialogue. And they are now tasked through the career strategy from DFE in England to roll out a much stronger presence in schools for careers advice going out to companies. Now, there's a lot of work being done to get that up and running, and I think there's a lot more to do, but they are, from a scale perspective and a coordination perspective, tasked with making this dialogue work so that you can start to overcome the problems around getting business-school dialogue going, and combined with a duty on schools now to promote apprenticeships and technical careers. There is a massive opportunity working with organisations like yourselves to get this right now, because we'll be failing lots of young people if we don't. And I think there is a real appetite between schools and businesses potentially working through an organisation like Careers and Enterprise Company, because lots of companies are doing their own thing, and that often feels like, well, we're doing our bit, where's everybody else? But working through at a national scale that's being funded to do exactly this, I'd encourage people to get involved and with what they're doing, so you can join up and leverage the resources they've got.
I think that's great what you were saying, Tanja, in terms of like running little competitions type thing. And I think for me, children growing up nowadays, times of social media and so on, one thing I didn't find when I was, obviously my career path was kind of setting its way anyway through my father, but what I'd like to see is kind of a website kind of focused on construction, but naming all the different trades and a genuine, realistic video of what that trade entails, both the good and the bad, because it's no point selling them as a bricklayer. You're out in summer all times. You will have the snow, you will have the rain, because you've got to be the right person, otherwise you're not going to last 6 months, 12 months type thing. And a 2-3 minute video in each individual area, like you say, modern methods of construction as well as your traditional trades, covering all bases, as well as your professional careers, your assistant site managers, your site managers and so on, that gives children a real insight. And I think if you work that hand in hand with the skills show, where they can come and they can do have-a-goes, and like you say, on site, so they can do have-a-goes, and then you run competitions on the back of it. So say the students went to the skills show, had a look around, they'd been able to go onto these websites to see what different trades and jobs and careers entailed, and they can think, right, okay, that's maybe for me. And then they were able to run into a little competition like that and actually have a go. I think it gives them a greater understanding rather than just, oh yeah, bricklayer, he builds a wall, or a site manager, he runs a site. It's what actually is entailed within that.
There is, though. I mean,
yeah.
Emma and then Neil.
I think the issue is there is that site, CITB is created Go Construct, but obviously no one knows about Go Construct. Otherwise, I mean, so obviously the issue is that we're not advertising the point of access well enough in the industry. So I think that's the point.
Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, because so we work with CITB, and one of the big challenges we've set down to them and working with us is how do we do more to promote the work they're actually doing on Go Construct. And so we'll be doing a lot more with them this year around our regional heats in the construction sector to be bigger and better around getting more, and you're all invited to get involved and to come along and see what's going on and participate and find out about the resources that are available. The thing we mustn't do is keep reinventing wheels. It's just improving the assets we've got, because coming along to the skills show, see the national finals, again, you're all invited to see the best of the UK in construction and young people, and really take the learnings from that and get more people to come to the things that exist rather than keep inventing new things. That's sometimes the biggest challenge that we face, as people come up with new ideas when there are lots of existing initiatives out there.
Are any of these things televised?
No, so the only television coverage we get is on BBC Breakfast through Steph McGovern, who talks about WorldSkills, and we've been trying to get them to be much more engaged, BBC, Channel 4, ITV, with the whole apprenticeships and skills agenda, and that is a challenge for some reason for broadcasters to see this as an interesting story. We think it's amazing, but they clearly don't.
And some other countries do things like that.
Yes,
I've been to South Korea, where there are big TV programs on Saturdays of people showing their practical skills in many different industries.
Indeed, and South Korea is number 2 in the world skills table.
There you
for
go.
that reason.
That's partly why.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so lots of good things happening there, but not enough people know about them or use the things that already exist. We've just got a few more minutes on this panel. Yes, a couple of questions there, near the back, and then lady on the aisle there.
Hi, Rachel Roxburgh, CEO of Delalia Rugby Works. We're a charity that works with teenagers who have been permanently excluded from mainstream education. So we work in alternative provision schools where there is practically zero career advice. A big part of what we do is we work with these young people and businesses and taking them in for taster days, which is going back to some of the conversations about trying to connect schools, young people with business. We have to take them out off-site to do this, and have had some real success. What it does, it opens their eyes to all the different career paths. As you said, the limited choice, and the young people are exposed to so few opportunities, particularly in alternative provision. But my point is that over a year ago, we had about 12% of our young people go on to apprenticeships because they have to leave alternative provision at 16. More often than not, they're just spewed straight into a poor quality college course because it ticks the box for the school. Not that I'm being cynical about this, but it's gone down to 2%. And there's this gap because obviously it's part of the rebooting.
So this is part of this lever issue we started off on.
It's left this sort of vulnerable age gap of 16 to 17-year-olds not being able to go into apprenticeships. I mean, our young people leave with probably a handful, probably 2 GCSEs. Very rarely are they English and maths. Apprenticeships is a really natural learning environment for them. Clearly, the normal education system doesn't suit them. We're trying to push our young people into that career path because a lot of them have the right thing, which is around attitude and leadership, which I know businesses are looking for. Often qualifications are great, but if the young person doesn't have the attitude, they can't succeed. And so I'm wondering how you sort of foresee that being an issue, because obviously we deal with alternative provision. I think mainstream do get a lot of opportunity, but alternative provision do. We're just a small charity trying to make our mark with these young people. And construction industry is an area we're really interested in, which is why we're delighted to be part of WhatHouse.
Great. Well, that's a very clear and specific question. Any comments on that? About the people who are missing out from these changes?
I'm just wondering
we'll
if
excuse Emma for the
anything,
moment.
I'm just wondering if any of the trailblazer groups have been approached, or if to try and make that inclusive.
We've got a really good partnership with McGee because they were a support of ours. We've been having conversations. Actually, one of our young people is going on to the apprenticeship. He wants to wait a year because he's 16.
Right.
But they're looking about how they, because of course of health and safety issues, I think their entry level is 18, but they're looking at how they can revise that because they're concerned. He goes on to a college course, they have to undo all that poor learning. And so that's a great partnership, but that's just one.
What about the T levels coming in though? The T levels?
Yeah.
Is that an option for them?
Yes, it is, but we have to try and find out all this information because the teachers can't. They just don't have the capacity, and they don't have any careers advice there. And I suppose it's looking at, I know the industry want to look at how they work in education, but there's a lot of organisations that have to support that education and how they might engage with them to make sure they're always up to speed on the opportunities. And I suppose we're quite niche because it is alternative provision.
Right.
Okay, well, you're making them think here on the panel, and we'll hear further from you later as well. We'll just take one more question at the end of this panel. Yes, here on the aisle, lady on the aisle now, who is also going to speak to us later.
Thank you. It's Karen Jones, Redrow, but also trustee of the CITB, the Industry Training Board. I just really wanted to pick up on the work experience point. As Tanja's just said, the T levels are going to involve a 3-month guaranteed work placement. Construction's one of the first streams to go live in 2020, I think. And that will be a huge challenge for us because we've talked about getting safe environments and so on, but I think we shouldn't underestimate that. But on the positive side, to try and get people more engaged and given the sort of technological aspect which Ashley's referred to, the CITB at the moment are commissioning funding bids to look at immersive technology and virtual reality technology for just that point, for educational engagements. So I do think there are some positives. I think if we're clever with technology, you can't replace being on site, but I think we could give a sort of 80-20, 80% virtual reality and 20% on site, which will enable us to get the numbers that we need going through, which we're going to struggle to do as individual employers.
That point is so important in terms of inspiring young people and thinking about the role of technology in construction, whether it's developments around modular off-site construction, BIM. There are lots of new things coming through which we're challenged by, and we want to work with CITB and industry to make sure that our competitions are more technology-driven, but also in terms of engaging with industry. I think Emma's point earlier, they're not necessarily with education, they're not necessarily up to date. So lots of people have outdated images of construction, and don't have an understanding of how technology is going to drive construction in the future, and capturing that sense of positivity about the future and how technology will drive that, I think is really important for parents and young people to get them more engaged. So the more we can work with CITB and others to really drive home that message at places like the Skills Show, I think there's fantastic opportunities to do that more.
Okay, well, I'll have to stop this panel here, and we'll broaden it out into the whole training issue in a moment. But I think everyone will agree there's been a lot of important ideas and a lot of good information there about using technology that we've just been talking about all the existing schemes and initiatives that are in place, about the changes to apprenticeships, about the good role models that already exist, and the work that's already going on in many major companies. There is a lot to expand on there in the future. So that's been a good start to our deliberations this morning. Thank you to the panel. Give them a round of applause. Thanks so much.
All right, okay.
And we'll switch over to the next panel, the training panel, seamlessly. Don't go away. There will be a coffee break in 45 minutes. Hang on in there. And yeah, we're going to have a change of crockery. Come and sit wherever you like. Yes, yes, we should have the same number of people. Hello. You're Jenny, right, yes, and you're Alison, I know that. You're Jeff, yeah. You must be Anthony, yeah, that's good. That's good, we are in good shape here. So, yes, we'll move straight on because we are going to be very good at sticking to time today. So this is broadening it out. There are many of the same issues here. This is training in general, and we've got Anthony Wilkinson on my right. He's the head of talent development at Crest Nicholson. And we've got Jenny Herdman, who is from the HBF and the Home Building Skills Partnership. We've got Professor Alison Cotgrave, who is the Professor of Built Environment Education at Liverpool John Moores University. And we've got Jeff Mann, who is the NHBC Industry Training Manager. So again, a lot of expertise and knowledge here about this. I'm going to ask them all to, like the last panel, just to say a little bit more, if they wish, about who they are and what their main point they want to get across here is, and then we'll go through some questions as we did last time. So who wants to kick off? Jenny, do you want to kick off?
First. Hi, I'm Jenny Herdman. I lead the Home Building Skills Partnership, which is part of the Home Building Federation. We had a grant from CITB which covers 4 years to actually look at how we can make a difference around the skills shortages in home building. The key points I think that I really want to talk about is that what we're really looking at doing is doing it together as an industry, because as you heard from the last panel, lots of people are doing lots of things that are really great as individual companies, but actually we need to pull that together and actually bring that into something that either is shared so that other people can share that best practice or is understood by other people. We have quite a thing around house building is not part, we're part of construction, but we're different. So our site managers do different things to infrastructure site managers. So people need to be able to understand that. And we also have a piece around our workforce being mostly subcontract. So of our site workforce, 85% of them are subcontract workforce rather than direct workforce. And that gives us huge, huge challenges. From a point of view of how we solve that, one of the things that we've started doing is looking at, so what actually is the problem? So we've identified 12 key roles that are skill shortage roles to us, and we've started to look at how many people we need in those roles. So rather than just saying, we know we've got a skill shortage, we've started to say, so how big is that skill shortage? And how many people do we need in each role? So bricklayer is a perfect example. Huge, huge gap in that. For every 10,000 houses we build in our traditional way, we need another 2,500 bricklayers. So if you start, looking at the government's target against that, you see what a huge issue it is. So we've started looking to mainstream education again and started looking at apprenticeships, but also what's going on in the colleges, which again was talked about in the last group. We have to fix that. We have to fix what's going on in the colleges because firstly, youngsters are going there and coming out unemployable, but actually, we've also got a really big group of people there who've already decided to take a step into construction, and we're not getting them into that job, so we're doing them a disservice. So those are the key things that I feel we need to concentrate on at the moment.
So that means we need something like 25,000 more bricklayers in the next few years,
yes,
according to my maths.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Or a different way of laying bricks, which is the other
Right.
option. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Anthony, you go next with your opening thought.
So 3 kind of key points, I guess, from an employer's perspective in trying to tackle the skill shortage. I think firstly, you can't go it alone as a company. I think the impact that we need to make has got to be collectively, hence why we've also committed to the skills partnership. First main point is actually agreeing what the skills standards are that we're trying to train to. If we don't have commonality across employers and across the sector, then how can we possibly understand that when we bring somebody into the sector, what the skills we're actually trying to develop are? So we split our thinking into kind of 2 levels really, and I think that's part of the challenge. So first level is directly employed. We see a lot of people coming out from degrees, higher apprenticeships we've just been engaged with, and degree level apprenticeships. And one of the common things we're seeing that are missing is the broader, more holistic viewpoint on skills development. So it's not just the technical expertise, it's about life skills, business skills, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, management skills. Even to the point where you'd almost say there's probably a culture in the sector of point and do. And we see that across our sites quite a bit on the subcontractor supply chain side. So a lot of our common feedback from our apprentices would be that actually the support I get on site isn't great because I'm pointed at and told to do, rather than a coaching culture. So again, it's an element that's missing within the skills agenda that's coming through currently. Second main point would be, once you've agreed actually what the common skills requirements are for your workforce, is actually then making sure that you actually embed that within your culture as an employer and across the sector. So that if you're a new entrant coming into the sector or a company, you can actually appraise yourself against the skills that you need, the skills that you've got, and the skills you're going to need in the future. And we've done that with some of the skills matrices that we're working on with the Home Building Skills Partnership to really good effect, actually. Because actually at a skilled worker level, and again, what is a skilled worker on the directly employed side, it's understanding and actually what skills have I got, and taking them through an appraisal process internally as well. So that's fine on directly employed, but actually in the supply chain, the other issue we've got is that we're not looking currently at future-proofing our sector by saying there is low levels of unemployment. How do you actually de-skill the roles to make sure you can actually boost productivity? Because actually, if you've only got so many bricklayers to go around, we've got to look at multi-skilling some of the trades and thinking of a completely different way to try and address the fact that there simply isn't enough people coming into the sector, even if there was in the UK that's currently unemployed. Final kind of closing thought would be, if you know what skills you're training to, and you've got commonality across the sector, and you're using that at company level, is what is the appropriate investment and commitment that a company in a sector should make into skills? We heard from Redrow earlier, really high levels of investment in terms of the percentage of employees that are kind of undertaking a formal career development pathway. Crest Nicholson, likewise, we've got 18% of our workforce undertaking a career or qualification currently. Where does that benchmark us across the sector? Is that low, medium or high? And likewise in the supply chain, if you went out to do analysis on the supply chain, would they say 20% is completely low? Actually, the majority of their workforce is already undergoing training. Because actually, there's an absorption rate. You can't just have all of your workforce built up of trainees and those that are in training. So there's definitely a balancing act to go through. And that'd be the kind of the 3 key areas that we're experiencing at the moment.
Right, thank you. These are good opening thoughts. So, Alison, do you want to take that on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming from a slightly different perspective. We don't teach bricklayers at the university. We're looking at the professional side of the quant surveyors, the construction managers. We teach a range of vocational degrees across our department, from building services engineering right across to real estate. And what the universities, I think I could speak, not university for all universities, but our big problem is to do with recruitment. So it's a similar thing with regard to the skilled labour side, is actually getting professionals and students to come and study our programmes at university. All our programmes are accredited by professional bodies, and I think built environment is what is fairly unique in that there are so many professional bodies that accredit programmes and give their badge of quality. And all of those professional bodies have a lot of industry engagement in determining what the curricula should be and what should be in our programmes. But in addition to that, there's a university requirement that there's an element of research that needs to feed into teaching. And what our aim is to develop the graduates to be the leaders of the construction industry in the future. And without that, I think we will have a problem that at that end of the industry, we're not going to be moving forward. So I believe that the vocational degree is a really important tool in providing that gap that's growing as we speak, basically. One of the problems we have is getting students to study our programmes, as I already mentioned. We have the same thing that maybe have with 16-year-olds, is that the industry is not seen to be as attractive as lots of other professions. And the other problem we have is that we recruit predominantly from 50% of the population, i.e. the male part of the population. So we've got currently at John Moores University 8 to 9% of our undergraduates are female, same at postgraduate level and same at postgraduate research level, very low levels of females engaging in our programmes. And we've done lots of outreach activity to try and address that. Things that have already been mentioned, working with careers teachers, teaching in schools. One of the things we're really proud of at the moment at JMU is the development of a bespoke degree programme for working with Redrow Construction in conjunction with a college in North Wales. Most construction management programmes are fairly generic. They deliver a set of learning outcomes that are dictated by a professional body. They are more geared towards commercial building rather than house building. And so we were approached by the college in Redrow to actually develop this degree programme that's specifically for people who want to go into to become professionals in the house building industry. So that programme is now being delivered in blocks, so it's non-traditional delivery, to part-time students who are all employees at Redrow. And we believe it's an excellent model maybe going forward, but you can only really do that if the company that you're working with is big enough to support that delivery. So it's something I'd like to explore a bit more with more of our industrial partners, of whether we can bespoke our degree programmes and also possibly make them a tool for companies to attract 18-year-olds into industry after A-level as an alternative to full-time degree study.
Right, there's some interesting issues for the industry there we should come back to. We'll just get to the opening comments from Jeff Mann, and then we'll look at some of these questions.
Morning, everyone, and thanks for allowing me to come. Well, like Ashley on the previous panel, I'm a time-served bricklayer, so I identified with a lot of the things that he said, actually, about the training. I think I benefited from an excellent training, and I do think FE needs to up its game a little bit, especially with the issues around actual practice on site and what's taught. But I'm sure we'll come on to that a little bit. Well, my background, yeah, I'm a bricklayer. I took part in the predecessor to WorldSkills. I was skill build. I didn't quite reach the heights of Ashley. I came third at the nationals. But really, but there we go. And then from that solid foundation, I sort of worked in site management, education, site inspection, and my current role in training. So I like to think I've got a little bit of a broad perspective because I've benefited a little bit about it. But with regards to NHBC, we started the training department about 22 years ago with a specific aim of improving quality and developing the managers out there. Predominantly, most of the training we do is with assistant site managers and site managers. But we do, the courses range from trade talks, which we do a lot, which is re-educating the bricklayers that's already been talked about, the trades mainly, through to defect prevention, a suite of health and safety courses, and we do some management and supervisory qualifications as well. All, hopefully, to give a better benefit to the end user, the homeowner, and improve that quality. We could be delivering the same course right from Falkirk, right throughout the country, 10, 12 defect prevention courses in one day. And in a typical good year, we train over 14,000 individuals and about 400, 450 MVQs. The point I want to get across, and it's been spoken to a bit, attracting people to this industry. In education and training, we've also got an issue, attracting the right people to become the educators of the future. Recently, I'll give you a little anecdote, that we did some seminars, bricklaying seminars, and at the end of one of the seminars, we've got a few guys who'd come from a construction college, and we'd gone through the issues that the industry had. And they said if we'd have known that had to be built in, we'd have been doing it for years. So there is that, whether you call it CPD development in-house, that's one of the areas that I really think we need to look at. And the cyclical nature of our industry over the years, it's not seen as a secure occupation. It's seen as, you know, we're there while the times are good. Back in 2010, 2011, our training department, training just disappeared overnight. And we're now back up to levels that we were employing back then. The qualification side of the business did carry on through because people needed those. I'm also involved with the T-panels. I sit on the T-panels, and I can see Bruce over there that also sits there. This is our opportunity as an industry to shape the future of what our next generation are going to experience from us. So if you're not already involved, there'll still be plenty of consultations. I'd really urge you to get involved with those. And finally, I don't think the trainers and the educators use enough of the data that's freely available out there with the quality issues that are on site and integrating it into the courses that we've got. I mean, NHBC publishes a vast amount of data on what the common faults are, what the common problems are, but I rarely see it delivered in the syllabus. To the point, going back to the T-panel stuff that I was talking about, it amazed me that regulations and standards wasn't in the current suite in sufficient depth. I'm pleased to say that it will be in the next qualification. So, thank you.
Thank you. Well, you've all raised some very important issues, and Jeff, you just raised the one about the you have to train the trainers. You have to have enough people who are able to carry out the necessary education. Is there something? Does that need some major new initiative? Are there ideas across the panel about that?
I know we've been trying to reach out to further education and higher education and sort of CPD courses and things like that. I think we have to do a little bit more of that, but I think as an industry, if there's a demand for it, we'll definitely do it. There's plenty of courses out there at the moment. I mean, one of the issues is, and there's some very good further education colleges out there, don't get me wrong, but we have a suite of qualifications at the moment. If we take a level 3 construction contracting qualification, it's got a number of mandatory modules and then some options that make up the qualification. And it's easy to deliver some of those modules than it is other. I mean, there is an additional model that's all about building regulations. It's very rarely chosen because candidates are directed down an avenue, which an avenue, if I'm being cynical, is it's easier to deliver, and you don't necessarily need the expertise in that area to deliver building regs and get a specialist in.
If we're talking about upskilling or training the trainer, there's got to be a shift in policy, because if you work in a college, the only way you're going to get access to industry updating, because that's what they call it, industrial updating, you need to apply for it in a college. So it's done by exception, it's not the norm. So therefore, actually, one of the challenges we've got is how is FE going to adopt the new T-skills and trailblazing apprenticeships? Because actually, if you're a member of a college teaching staff, you're not going to have access to the relevant skills, latest methods of construction on site. So it's got to be a shift in policy at FE level.
And I think FE can learn from HE in that as well, because and I have no real evidence other than talking to employers, but HE seems to engage with employers in a much different way to FE does, and I think that, you know, that's part of how they keep more up to date, possibly. We certainly from some of the feedback that we're having through, and part of this is because, you know, of the 12 roles we've got, only 8 of them are the trade roles. So there's some of it is about the levels and the quantity of them, but there isn't the sort of detail of the issue being about how people are educated. It's as you said, how do you get people interested in them? Whereas the roles that we've got that are sitting in an FE college, it's about they're training them, but actually they're not fit for work when they come out the other end of it. And that doesn't mean just the whole thing of they don't get there on time, which is the classic thing that everyone talks about. It means that they don't realise that they've got to put X amount of doors up in a day or lay X amount of bricks. There's no actual sort of, this is what a day's work would look like when you get to the end of it coming through.
Alison, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in HE, we do have an awful lot of engagement with industry, that's absolutely certain. But I would say that the main tool that we use for curriculum development is the PSRB advice, because that's been gleaned from a combination of input from industry and academia to come up with learning outcomes.
What does PSRB stand for?
Professional bodies.
Right, okay.
Like CIOB and RICS. But one of the problems that the built environments sector in HE is not suffering from, but is becoming a problem, and probably will become more of a problem, is the requirement of universities now that most of their academic staff hold a PhD. And in built environment disciplines, most of our graduates will do a degree, go and get a very well paid job, become chartered. They don't do PhDs, whereas in other areas, like certainly in our science faculty, people will do a degree, a PhD, a postdoc, an RA, and continue through that route. So we are having problems recruiting staff. I'll be honest, a lot of our staff are now coming from overseas because the value of a PhD in built environment disciplines is seen to be more important than it is possibly in the UK. And I can't blame our graduates for not doing a PhD, because after nursing and teaching, built environment disciplines have the highest employability rate. So why would somebody stay and do a PhD when they can get a job and do on a scholarship, pay themselves to do a PhD when they can get a job with a starting salary of £35,000, which will be £50,000 within the next 3 years?
Can the brilliant people who run universities not work out that point? Not realise this point?
I'm not in that level. I know. And if I argue,
I'm just trying to be provocative.
I have a boss who we have tried to use that argument. If you, within these 4 walls, if we use that argument, the argument back is, well, is built environment really a university subject if you've not got people who've got PhDs? You've got to be very careful. We're also on a little bit of a sticky wicket in that built environment disciplines have cyclical recruitment, and most universities' budgets are worked calculated on full-time fee-paying full-time student fees. What universities, senior managers in universities like, are programs that will always recruit to their target year on year. So things like pharmacy and chemistry, they will always recruit. Whereas built environment recruitment tends to follow the industry, and if the industry is in boom, recruitment will follow 2 years later. If the industry goes into recession, student numbers will drop, and it tends to follow a 2-year cycle. And it is a problem in universities, and it's not just certainly at JMU. If I go to, I'm going to another university this afternoon to do a PSRB accreditation visit, and we will have the same conversations as we have at JMU and all the other built environment departments that I visit. So what we really need is more students doing the higher level qualification to move into academia, take that, maybe the research route, to feed that back into the education of the professionals in the future.
I think part of the solution to this, though, is us as a sector, we've got to embrace and endorse chartered professions.
Yeah.
So last year there was 18,000 white professional and academic cards issued by CITB to the realm of construction. But last year we did some research with the NHBC to understand people going through qualifications, particularly at site, there's only 500. So if we're going to help HE actually train the trainer and actually raise the skill set, we've got to come together as a sector and say, actually, we endorse and support chartered professional memberships. Because if you're going to go into a career, why would you want to go into a career as a sector which might not offer that, but the other side of the sector in commercial contracting would? But there's a few employers, we're one of those that support and endorse that. But this isn't about a few doing a lot, it's about a many doing a bit.
And could that be done across the industry?
Well, it's back to whether there's an appetite, but yes, it's part of what we're trying to do as a partnership is show good practice and start saying to people, why wouldn't you be doing the same? And that isn't about, one of the things we've had a lot of debate about is we are setting what we're calling minimum standards, which sounds really wrong, but actually it's saying this is what everybody can do, and then other people will build on top of it. So that's our starting point of saying, if you've got a site manager, what's the minimum that they all must be able to do? And then different companies would have, their gold, silver or bronze or whatever on top of that. But yes, that would be something we could look at from whether that becomes part of that minimum.
What do you all say to a teenager? I get teenagers who come to me and say, how do you become a politician? And I say, are you sure? But let's say, despite all these cyclical problems, which is must be quite a deterrent to people. You get your teenager who says, well, even though I've not heard about this much at Careers Week or from my school, nobody's giving me much information about this, I've worked out that actually there's a lot of scope for creativity in this particular industry, and when you look at the future, we're definitely, one thing you're definitely going to need in this country for decades to come is millions of homes. So I can't go wrong in this industry if I'm any good. And what's more, the top jobs are pretty well paid at the management level. There's been a little controversy about that from time to time. So I've worked out this industry is a good idea. Well, what do you say to that 16-year-old? What's the, boiling all this down, because it's so complex, what do you say to that 16-year-old about how you're going to get into this industry? What does anybody say to them?
Well, because those people are so rare in my experience,
Right, okay.
I'm just having to think, maybe chain them to a radiator and sign them onto a course straight away.
Right, okay.
I mean, the people that we get who come to, say, open days, they're people that know about the industry already. They have parents or uncles who are working in the industry, so they know about it. But again, it goes to that sort of 50% of the population. We're recruiting from people that already know that.
Right, and we're just not getting to the rest.
It's the rest.
And interestingly, they know about the cyclical nature of it, and they still want to get into it.
Because people who are very highly qualified, they ride the storm. The research shows
and it's not the only cyclical industry.
They're not going to lose their jobs in the recession. So they're the easy ones.
But this is about reach, isn't it? Because a decade ago there was 534 connections offices across the UK offering advice to 16 to 18-year-olds. So that channel, that mechanism's gone. So let's spin the thinking differently. All the employers across the UK are probably competing to get into a school. And what space is on a school's curriculum for careers advice? So one of the greatest things that we could possibly do is build in careers evenings alongside parents evening, which is what I'm off to tonight. Start getting in very early, inviting employers in quite young. Not just
yeah, that's a
secondary
really
school.
good idea, actually. I do think
Thanks,
we've
Jo.
got to do something really... Yeah, well done, Anthony. So I was talking to, and it was a primary school head teacher who told me she got 70 emails a week on average from employers wanting to come and talk in the school. So there's plenty of people interested in going in, but how does she possibly manage that amount? So she basically just hits delete. She just doesn't even, you know, unless you've got a really good heading in your subject heading, she just won't even, if it just says, you know, careers talk, it just doesn't go through, because how does she possibly work through which ones she should do? So I do think there's something we should all be doing, because, you know, again, as was talked about earlier, the employers want to do this, they want to go and talk about it. So there should be a way that, you know, youngsters do something that is not in that directed by the school type way of doing it. I also think we, you know, the whole piece of it's house building rather than its construction is another piece that we are trying to pull through, and to try and actually get people seeing that that's kind of a different type of, you know, it's more local to them. They see something within their community. They see that they're really making a difference. And I'm not saying that building a bridge doesn't make a difference, but it's something that they maybe can connect with in a very different way. Another piece, I think, is the whole bit of we're talking about jobs from, you know, level 2 to level 6, 7, 8. And I think that gives us quite an issue as well. And we should probably look at how other sectors manage that and how they actually recruit in different ways for that.
So, I also think there's an issue there around I don't know enough about the funding mechanism, if I'm honest, but what I do know and what I'm told anecdotally is that why would you train, we'll use bricklayers again, when you can get the same money for training somebody that you don't have to buy all them resources for? So potentially that issue within FE, I know there is a premium because you've got to buy the bricks and that, but it doesn't cover the cost of the provision. So the provision gets dumbed down if you look at it, because they've got to deliver that course within the funding that they're given. So it's not totally down to them. The other issue, when I started out on this career in construction, I had the choice of 4 technical colleges within a 15-mile radius of my home. I would now have to travel to just one, albeit it's a little bit closer. But you did have that choice. Now there's the distance to travel to get that specialist training. So I think if going forward, the provision needs to encompass some way of paying for the travel there, which was a point that was brought up in the previous panel. If we want to get people on, we've got to get them there. Maybe we've got to pay for the travel to get there.
And there is a complete disconnect between what they train people in and the number of jobs. So there is no college that you would find has the biggest cohort of their construction piece doing bricklaying, even though that's the biggest number that we need. And actually, it's usually the smallest number, isn't it?
And I mean, if you think about it, bricklaying is probably not the most expensive, because you saw wood once, you can't use it again. At least you can knock bricks down and
But if we're talking about driving the enthusiasm for a quality apprenticeship, you've got to build into the curriculum, not just, you've got to de-skill it to exactly what the role is, so we can get more people through it, but also put into the curriculum around how do you start up your own business, the finance skills that you need, the desire that you need, the communication skills, the management of your own business. Because what we've seen with our bricklayers is that as the prices go up, rather than encouraging longer working hours, actually they're finishing at lunchtime on a Friday. So there was something ingrained quite early on as a 16 to 19-year-old in terms of the work ethic, and making sure that actually that is ingrained in terms of when times are good, this is how you can grow your own business.
We've got a short time before it's coffee time. Anybody got a question or comment on this? Yes, here near the front.
I was just pondering, how do we tap into that 16-year-old who's desperate to get into the industry? And I think we mentioned earlier about, do we televise the competition? But most 16-year-olds I know, and I've got one at home, don't go anywhere near the television. They're on YouTube. And their idols and the people they follow are very different than the kind of people we would have at the same age. So we have to get into the head of a 16-year-old. And I know that RICS actually funded one of the popular female YouTubers to go on a day around RICS headquarters and went to speak to a retail surveyor and went onto the roof of John Lewis and, you know, Oxford Street or whatever it was. And then she put it out onto her YouTube channel to all the girls she's usually telling how to put makeup on. Now that's what we need to do for every single trade if we're going to compete with this massive wall of noise on the competition.
That's a very good idea.
Yes.
I wouldn't know where to start, but you know, other people better than I would know.
We're just starting to do an attraction campaign which is based around social media and so on. I'm well out of my comfort zone trying to work through it and have to keep texting my daughter going, do you think Spotify will work and things like that? But we're heading down that direction, aren't we? And it is a very, very different way of doing it, but we hadn't even thought about, you know, look for somebody who is one of the people that they normally
Maybe you need
watch.
some 18-year-olds designing the...
I mean, we even mentioned the Go Construct website earlier. I got both of my kids to have a look at it. And there's a quiz you can do, and what would it be? And they said it was the most patronising thing they'd ever looked at. And I fed it back to CITB, and I know that they've been making changes, but you've got to get into the mindset of that age group, or we'll fail.
This sounds like pretty good advice. Any other comments on that?
I think it's entirely right. It's a bit like people are my age deciding what we think our students want. I mean, how do I know as a 52 what an 18-year-old wants? And I think you're exactly right. And one of the things I get a bit cross about these days is seeing pictures of girls with hard hats on as a way to attract them into the construction industry, because they were doing that. Believe it or not, I was a cover girl 20-odd years ago. I was on the front cover of the IOB magazine wearing a hard hat. There's no more girls in construction now than there was then, so it didn't work then, it doesn't work now. We've got to be a bit more innovative than just putting an attractive girl in a hard hat and hoping that will get people into the industry. And I think talking to younger people, certainly talking to students now about their ideas about what will attract them in is a really good idea. One of the things we've tried, to go to your point about the schools, is one of the things we have tried to do is have events for careers teachers in the university and tell them about the careers in construction and property, and then they go back to schools. So we're hitting a much wider audience with a single event than we would do just going out to every school and saying the same thing. But if I'm honest, we've tried that a lot, and I think the industry and education all got to work together, and professional bodies, to come up with some more innovative ideas to try and attract people into the industry at all the levels, if we're going to satisfy the demand for construction moving forwards.
I think also we've got some good innovative ideas. It's just they're in pockets. Yeah. So, you know, if we're going to do careers evenings, we should be saying, let's do it across the country. Let's get it, you know, that actually works for everywhere, and divide it up, and, you know, Crest do a certain area, Redrow do another area, and we get it across the whole country, because, you know, I don't think it's that we don't have enough ideas. I think it's about that they're in pockets.
I totally agree with this image aspect though, but putting the female in a hard hat, and actually we've got to switch the thinking into what are the skills that appeal to you? Because for some people, problem solving, communication, project management, dealing with complexity, they appeal to some people. Being creative, how to resolve a lot of issues on a daily basis. The sector comes second. So you've got to appeal to people. What is it that people actually want to do, particularly at that age range? If you look at digital, IT digital, for instance, you can't keep pace with apprenticeships in IT digital, because the type of people that are so brilliant at what they're doing, so creative, that are writing these Yahoo apps and selling them for millions of pounds, they don't need a qualification. Because what's tapped into their hardwiring is that they've got the ability to problem solve, be creative. So we've got to tap into them in a slightly different way.
Rupert's going to collect all these copies of Show House magazine that have a woman in a hard hat on the cover. So that was a very well-aimed shaft of criticism. I know you didn't mean it that way.
There's a recycling wagon outside waiting.
And we are going to, in 20 minutes, we're going to discuss diversity. Anyway, so let's just have one more question. Yes, yeah. Microphone down the aisle again. Just that, yeah.
Actually, it was more of a comment than a question, because my name's Helen Moore and I'm Managing Director of City and Country. We're a house builder. And the point about the lady in the hard hat, my graduates go out to the graduate training fairs and they say that the minute that they say to the potential graduate trainees that their managing director is a female, that is self-evidently means that there are opportunities. And I think the more that we can try, and this will be I'm sure the debate next up on diversity, that we can try to see more role models of all types and actually promote that. It's so easy because people can just look and say, well, I could definitely work for that company. There's definitely opportunity there. And I think that's a very, very important point. That's much more hard-hitting than putting someone attractive in a hard hat.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just one answer on that.
Yes, sure.
One of the things that I'm going to start doing some work on is that when we look at the graduate intake that comes into the house builders, it's about a third women. So actually they do come in and take the jobs. I'm trying to work through how do we understand where they get to, when do they leave the industry, what does that work through? Quite a big piece of work, but it's not that they're not interested because they are there in the beginning and taking the jobs.
Yeah, I would agree. We have 50% intake on our graduate, small graduate training scheme compared to Crest, but we will have 50% come in. My challenge is always I can get them in many of the areas that are naturally about communication and sales and marketing, planning, design, those. Where I really want them is on the production side, in construction, in technical and in commercial.
And my view is when you get them there, that's when we'll then get female plumbers and so on.
I totally agree, and it's a big challenge.
Right. Well, that is a good note to lead into coffee and our next discussion. Anybody got a last question or comment on this? No? Again, I think there's been a lot of... Oh, yes, we have. Okay, we'll just take this one, and then we're going to stop.
My name's Sean Lane and I'm from supplied to the building industry for sanitary ware for some years. But my question or comment really is, we've spoken about a lot of 16 to 18-year-olds, and you can get people who want to change their career or change their career path, come out of university with a qualification. Actually, there aren't really any jobs in that. So what do I do now? And are we missing that sort of young 20, 22, 24-year-olds that actually this could be a fantastic industry for them to go into? They've got a grounding in education, but we need to take them, show them what can be done in the building industry, because, just here today, there's some fantastic opportunities. And a lot of those would have been when the recession was quite bad in the building industry and developers, and don't realise now that actually this is a career path that you could go into in lots of different areas. And it's how do we capture those, if you like, or let them know that there are opportunities there to be had.
Any quick comment on that, Alison?
It's a really good point, a brilliant point. Most universities these days run what we call conversion masters programs. They're all accredited by the professional bodies and they're designed specifically for that. So we take students who've got degrees that they can't then immediately get graduate level employment, and within a year they can do the master's program. It's called conversion masters because it's basically a condensed rather than a very high level, and then those people can become those programs are accredited and they get jobs. The employability rate of those programs is 100%. They are as employable as undergraduate students that have done 3 years, maybe with slightly different companies. But we have the highest numbers on postgraduate students at the university than any other programmes. We've got 50 odd on our QS conversion masters, and a lot of masters might have 5 or 6. So we have a massive PGT bunch of students, and the programmes were designed specifically for that. And we market that to all our undergraduate students on those programmes where the employability rates are a lot lower. And they predominantly come from geography, business and media. Those are the 3 big courses, undergraduate programmes that the students have done on those programmes.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, there's something to tell them if you meet one about the opportunities available. And that, of course, is the challenge on all of this, because we've heard of some very good initiatives and work across companies and in higher education and through the federations and councils represented here, but a huge communications challenge of how to get to the 16-year-old watching something else on YouTube, who may never be aware of these opportunities. But since we're coming back after our break, we're coming back to diversity and leadership, and we'll see if we can solve some of these problems. So again, thank this very knowledgeable and informative panel in the usual way, and we'll take our coffee. Thank you.